Picture this. You're standing before the Great Pyramid of Giza, taller than a 40-story building, built over 4,000 years ago without modern machines. Shift the scene. You're walking on a Roman road still intact today, or gazing at Olmec stone heads carved to symbolize order. One thing becomes clear. What they achieved back then continues to shape the way we live now. We still rely on these massive technological innovations, political structures, and cultural symbols to bring people together. Does that sound primitive? To me, it sounds brilliant. And far from being primitive, the Egyptians, Romans, Achaemenids, Indians, and Olmecs created systems and technologies that still impact our modern world. And that's my argument in this podcast. These civilizations were advanced, organized, and deeply influential. Most importantly, they remain relevant today because the systems they built continue to shape the way we live now. So how do we see this relevance? First, in their social and political structures. We are now in the 21st century, and when we think about the governments we live under today, from presidents to parliaments, political authority and organization can be traced back to these civilizations. Second, their technological innovations. Egyptians mastered irrigation and monumental architecture. Romans built roads, aqueducts, and concrete structures so durable they outlasted their empire. The Achaemenids implemented canal irrigation and administrative tools to manage a vast empire with harsh conditions. These weren't just for survival, but they were for innovations that still inspire and inform technology today. Third is religion and culture. It gave these civilizations their unity and power. For example, ancient Indian civilizations developed rich religious and philosophical systems, like early Hindu and Buddhist practices. These two religions are vastly popular in today's world. This shows that religion wasn't just a superstition, it was a foundation for political authority and social cohesion. Finally, we need to recognize the experiences of women in these civilizations. Some were dehumanized to an extent of downcast. We can connect the mistreatment of women and the typecasting of their societal roles to today's realm. Looking at these historical features can help us take actionable steps into improving the future. So in today's podcast, I'll be taking you through each of these four areas: political structures, technology, religion, and women, and showing how they proved that ancient civilizations were never primitive. Instead, they were advanced, influential, and still deeply relevant to the world we live in today. And by the end, I hope you'll see that studying civilizations like the Egyptians, Romans, and Olmec isn't about memorizing distant facts. It's about recognizing their ongoing influence on our governments, our innovations, and our beliefs. These civilizations are a part of our present, not just our past, and to understand who we are today, we need to understand them. So let's dive in. The Egyptians are a clear example of how advanced ancient civilizations could be, and their mastery of engineering allowed them to build pyramids that still leave us in awe today. But beyond monuments, they could develop a calendar based on astronomy that influenced later societies. The way they recorded knowledge through hieroglyphics is also an early foundation of writing and communication. These accomplishments remind us that even in today's world of technology, we can still depend on the same pillars of organization and science and record keeping. Central to Egypt's success was the key term Nile River, which provided fertile soil, fresh water, and a reliable source of food. One especially productive area was the key term Fayum Basin, a region that benefited from the Nile's flooding and allowed agriculture to flourish for thousands of years. The Nile also connected Egypt to the Mediterranean Sea, linking them to trade routes with the Middle East and Europe. According to the Module 2 lecture on ancient Egypt, geography was Egypt's greatest resource, and their ability to manage water in a smart, sustainable way became the foundation for political stability and societal growth. This agricultural success allowed communities to settle permanently, shifting from a nomadic lifestyle to organized agrarian societies. Beyond food, the Nile also served as a highway for transportation and communication, and especially trade. As stated in the Module 2 lecture on ancient Egypt, control of water and land became a source of political power, and pharaohs and local officials could redistribute resources. As a result, they managed this source very effectively. Politically, Egypt was highly organized. Pharaohs ruled as both kings and gods, and they centralized authority while relying on a large bureaucracy. This contained officials and scribes to manage resources, collect taxes, and oversee construction projects. Religion played a central role in legitimizing this power, and pharaohs are seen as divine representatives on earth. As exemplified on page 36 of Chapter 1 of Gods Against Gods by Jonathan Kirsch, pharaohs had the power to reshape religion and society. Akhenaten, for example, moved the capital, created a new government and royal court, introduced worship of a single god, and influenced art and architecture. This demonstrated how one ruler could transform an entire civilization. This integration of politics and religion helped unify the population and maintain social order. Egyptian society was also very carefully structured. Farmers, artisans, and traders all played critical roles, while elites and priests had political and religious power. Their written system recorded this on a key term, papyrus. It allowed laws, religious texts, and economic records to be preserved. The Rosetta Stone, another key term, later enabled modern scholars to translate hieroglyphics and understand Egyptian governance and culture. The priesthood controlled major aspects of daily life and rituals, and this also showed how religion also intertwined with governance and culture. The hierarchy created a lot of order and efficiency and the capacity for long-term development. Now, women in Egypt held important and influential roles, though their authority was often clouded by doubt or mystery in historical accounts. The story of a key term, Queen Elissa Dido, legendary founder of Carthage, reflects the common skepticism that surrounded powerful women, where their accomplishments were questioned or mythologized. As stated in the Module 2 lecture on ancient Egypt, women could directly impact the kingdom by managing agricultural estates, overseeing trade transactions, and participate in temple rituals. They could also even be pharaohs, as seen with leaders like Hatshepsut, though this was pretty rare. Their involvement in politics, religion, and economy shows that female agency was not only recognized but also essential, and far from being passive, women actively shaped the culture of Egypt. This left a legacy that is still highlighted today and significant for female leadership. Egypt's innovations and social systems continue to shape the modern world in very, very tangible ways, and the concept of a centralized government with layers of administration can still be seen in some countries today. The writing system on papyrus laid the groundwork for record-keeping and legal documentation in even modern libraries, and their water management along the Nile River is still there in Egypt today and resembles modern irrigation. We can also look historically to see how they managed gender equality, because in some cases they were quite fair. From the fertile banks of the Nile River, where Egyptians built their society on agriculture, writing, and monumental architecture, we can move across the Mediterranean to Rome. This civilization would leave its own mark on history, and while both civilizations relied on natural resources to support large populations, the Romans expanded their influence through military organizations, roadwork, and legal systems. Now, studying the Egypt helps us understand Rome better and in their centralized power, engineering, and record-keeping. The Romans established a key term, republic, a system in which citizens could vote for leaders and participate in government, this creating a foundation for representative governance. The key term Senate, made of key term patricians, the elite class, advised magistrates and influenced laws, while another key term, assemblies, allowed ordinary citizens to vote on important decisions. Now, this balance of power between elites and common people helped Rome maintain stability while expanding its influence. According to Module 3 of the lecture on the Roman Empire, it was said that a lot of the political systems in the United States come from the basis of the Roman Empire. Sound primitive? I don't think so. Roman technologies and innovations were equally impressive. They represented how advanced ancient society was, not being primitive in any matter. They built roads, aqueducts, and bridges that connected the empire and enabled trade and communication. Their engineering feats and construction, such as the Colosseum and really big temples, demonstrated advanced knowledge of architecture and urban planning. Rome also developed legal systems and standardized currency, and all of which endure for centuries and stay today. The Roman road system was also a marvel of engineering. It also shaped social life and political mobility. Roads were initially built for legions, but they also facilitated trade and communication. making Rome a connected and cohesive empire. As historian John Holland Smith notes on page 81 of Chapter 5 on Gods Against Gods, the roads supported way stations called stabula, where travelers could eat, rest, and change mounts. This created an entire service industry along the empire's arteries. As Smith directly says on page 81 of Chapter 5 on Gods Against Gods, inns, as it happens, were a feature of the famous system of roads that was one of the greatest achievements of ancient Rome. This example shows how Roman technological innovations like roads supported economic goals but also affected society, and many Roman innovations are used commonly today. We see them in everyday life, so why question their relevance and call the founders primitive? Just as roads connected cities and facilitated trade, they also influenced the lives of women, whose roles, though much, much more restricted than in Egypt, were shaped by family and religious participation. Women still influence society, though they cannot vote or have any legal and human rights whatsoever. As stated on the Module 3 lecture on the Roman Empire, their roles were largely confined to private and religious spheres, and they had very little power over property, law, or governance. Even wealthy women had minimal ability to affect political decisions directly. They were dehumanized, and men were always given priority. And although women had little formal political power, their influence often extended through religious and familial spheres. This naturally leads us to examine religion, and Romans had a pantheon of gods, and it wasn't until much later that the idea of monotheism reached. Figures like Julius Caesar not only held power, but also performed religious duties, and their intertwined nature of governance and religion in Rome. Religion shaped law, public behavior, and even military campaigns, and studying Rome helps us understand how governance and technology shape the way we live today. It gives political concepts and gauges our equality movement with the past, so we can see how much we improved as a world. Having explored how Rome built a lasting legacy through its Republic, Senate, engineering feats, and legal innovations, we now turn eastward to the Achaemenid Empire. While Rome relied on civic institutions and roads to unify its people, the Achaemenids developed a vast imperial system. This contained diverse peoples across thousands of miles. By comparing these civilizations, we see how different they were in their approaches and governance, yet we also recognize their shared strategies for managing such large populations. Stretching from the Indus River to the Mediterranean, it became one of the largest empires in the world. Cyrus the Great established a strong and centralized government, and later rulers known as the key term King of Kings maintained absolute authority over the empire. In other words, this meant that they were the top leader over all local kings and provinces in the empire. This central leadership allowed the Achaemenids to unify a vast, culturally diverse population. The Achaemenids also showed mastery over nature and engineering, and they created a key term, qanats, underground water channels that brought fresh water from higher elevations to cities, and badgirs, wind towers that circulated cool air. These technologies made life in arid climates more comfortable and demonstrated the king's power to harness nature. Because the Achaemenids thought the king could move nature itself. In accordance to page 13 of A Bridge Between Earth and Sky, How the Natural World Shaped the Civilizations of Ancient and Early Persia by Sophia Cabana, it was conveyed that the Achaemenids engineered cities that worked with nature and not against it. By using qanats to channel water underground and badgirs to circulate air, they created comfortable and productive spaces in the harsh desert. This clever use of natural resources was not only sustained by large populations, but also made the rulers seem almost divinely capable of bending nature to his will. According to the lectures on Module 4, The Early Persian Empire, it states that religion and symbolism played a major role as well. And key term, Persepolis, the capital of the empire, carvings of bulls, cows, and winged figures communicated strength, prosperity, and divine protection. And in this capital, you could see a lot of that. In key terms, Zoroastrianism, animals represented moral goodness and cosmic order. It also represented daily life, and Zoroastrianism still exists today and has relevance to the present tense. It is important to study this history to link what was developed from the ancient times. This mastery over nature not only reinforced the king's authority, but also set the stage for the Achaemenids to express their power through religion and art. This is exemplified on page 19 of A Bridge Between Earth and Sky by Sophia Cabana, effectively stating that in Achaemenid art, animals weren't just decoration. They symbolized the values of the empire. Bulls and cows represented strength, fertility, and prosperity, while winged creatures like the Shedu combined animal and divine traits to show the king's protective and almost godlike power. Women in the Achaemenid Empire mostly focused on household and family life. They rarely had public power or influence over politics. Some royal women could advise the king or act temporarily as rulers, but for most women, life was centered on raising child, managing homes, and supporting social traditions. Compared to Egypt, women had very little influence in public life. While the Achaemenids demonstrated how centralized leadership, religious symbolism, and technological innovation could unite such a big empire, further east in the Indian subcontinent, another civilization was developing its own unique approaches to governance, religion, and society. Much like the Nile or the Tigris, the key term Ganges River provided fertile land for agriculture. It supported large populations and enabled the growth of cities and trade networks. Stated in Module 5 of the Gupta Empire lecture, this river was central to not just survival, but also to cultural and religious practices. It essentially formed the lifeblood of the society. Politically, ancient India was organized around the key term caste system, a hierarchical social structure that divided people into distinct groups. This was based on birth, occupation, and social duty. The system created stability and order, but also limited social mobility. It defined people's roles from birth. In the Module 5 lecture, the caste system was compared to the tax brackets we have here in the United States. It defined the proportions of the lower class, middle class, and wealthy class. Religion, particularly Hinduism, reinforced the structure and gave people a shared set of beliefs and rituals. In this way, communities function as what scholars called imagined communities, a key term. People felt a shared identity and belonging through religious practices, even if they never met all members of their civilization. Women in early Indian society had restricted roles compared to Egypt or Persia. Most women were responsible for managing households, raising children, and performing religious duties. In general, public political power for women was minimal. Technologically and intellectually, ancient India contributed significantly to mathematics and astronomy, and one of the most notable figures was Aryabhatta, a mathematician and astronomer. Aryabhatta calculated the value of pi with remarkable accuracy, and developed methods for predicting solar and lunar eclipses. His work demonstrated that ancient Indians were not only careful observing the natural world, but also applying mathematical reasoning to understand it. Many theories of Aryabhatta are still used in our common standards for mathematics, and he developed strategies well before the Americas was to even come into existence. We also use many political structures today that come from ancient India. It is a republic form of being represented that came from the Mallavas. The Mallavas used the term Gana to describe their political constitution. It emphasized a resistance to autocracy. Leaders such as the Maharaja or Mahasenapati were often elected or chosen from privileged families. As exemplified in the tribal communities in the Gupta Age paper by Gautam and Dwivedi, the Mallavas used the term Gana to describe their political constitution. Leaders such as the Maharaja were often elected or chosen from privileged families. Studying the Golden Age of India is important because it helps us understand how advanced social, political, and intellectual systems shaped this civilization, and during this period, India developed sophisticated mathematics and astronomy. It exemplifies figures like Aryabhatta. The organization of the system through the caste system and the creation of imagined communities around Hinduism show this social structure that can unify large populations. Finally, we turn to the Olmecs, one of the earliest major civilizations in Mesoamerica, along the Gulf Coast of present-day Mexico. Politically, the Olmecs were organized into small city-states with power concentrated in elite families. Leaders oversaw agriculture, trade, and religious rituals. They established early forms of government that later influenced Mesoamerican societies like the Maya and the Aztec. Religion was central to Olmec life, as stated in the Module 6 lecture on the Olmecs. They practiced ritual ceremonies to honor deities connected to nature, such as the jaguar god. The jaguar god symbolized strength and fertility. These religious beliefs were intertwined with governance, and leaders often claimed divine sanction for their authority. Women in Olmec society played important roles in religious and domestic life. While evidence of political power for women is limited, they were likely involved in ceremonial activities and household management. Technologically, the Olmecs were highly innovative. They are famous for colossal stone heads, some weighing multiple tons, which were carved with remarkable precision. They developed early forms of writing and calendrical systems, as well as advanced agricultural techniques such as irrigation and raised fields to manage the swampy terrain. These technologies allow them to sustain large populations and create urban centers. The Olmecs are relevant today because they laid the foundation for many cultural, religious, and political practices in Mesoamerica. Their innovations in art, writing, and city planning influenced societies that followed, and studying them helps us understand how human societies developed. By examining the Olmecs, we gain insight into the universality of human ingenuity. They have deep historical roots of culture and governance. As we explored today, from the fertile banks of the Nile to the monumental cities of the Olmec, from the organized republics of Rome to the engineering genius of the Achaemenid Empire and the intellectuals of ancient India, it's clear that these civilizations were far from primitive. They were innovative, complex, and influential. Each one developed unique social structures, political systems, technologies, and religious beliefs that shaped the lives of millions and still do. Studying these civilizations matters because it shows us the roots of societal organization and their ingenuity. The Egyptians taught us how to manage water and record keep and sustain civilizations. Rome reminds us how law and governance can connect to maintain vast populations. The Achaemenids demonstrate how technology, religion, and symbolism can legitimize authority. India's golden age illustrates the power of science and mathematics and social systems in shaping ethical and intellectual communities. The Olmec revealed that innovation is a universal human trait and not limited to one region of the world. Their relevance today is undeniable. Urban planning, scientific thought, and cultural practices can all be drawn from these civilizations. By studying them, we gain insight into problem solving, and we gain history and how all these theories were founded. Understanding the triumphs and failures of these civilizations can help us navigate our own world, reminding us of progress. A lot of the problems we face today were faced by ancient civilizations, and we need to learn from them. In short, these civilizations were not just history. They are mirrors reflecting our present and guides for our future. Humanity transcends time and geography. They shape the path forward. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.